What's up, everybody? This is Jay here with Fantasy Labs, and I'm here with a few guests to break down this miniature three-game slate, one of the smaller slates we'll see this whole season, but we got to get used to it with the playoffs. For the Monday, April 18th slate, got the NBA crew, the grind crew back together. Justin and John, how's it going, guys?
Glad John can join us. Glad John can wake up from his slumber. He was barely able to make this pod. I think we had to push it like 15 minutes for him to jump on, but worth it to see his weird Texas accent. How's it going, John?
We got different hours for MLB, so I get to change my schedule entirely as opposed to working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now I'll get a little time to sleep in the morning and then jump on before writing nightly previews. So it's a nice little change up.
Yeah, a little time to sleep in, man. Whew. You're like me throughout high school. Just sleep until 11 every single day. Must be nice.
It's a different change of life. I must agree. It's quite enjoyable at the moment.
Yeah, I bet, man. I'm definitely jealous. Well, let's give the people what they came here for and break down this nice three-game slate. Starting things off, we got the first game, the Pacers at Raptors. Raptors are 7-point favorites, a 193.5 total, low again. I believe the Raptors were 6.5-point favorites last game. We saw what happened. So now they're 7. So I think that says a little bit with how people feel about the Raptors and how game one, they kind of let things go. Bad coaching, you could say, for sure. Rotations were suspect. But let's start things off with the Pacers side. And I think the guy we have to talk about here is Paul George. Where do you kind of have him? He seems a bit kind of underpriced maybe on both sides, but are you kind of running back to that well at all?
Yeah, I think he's still a very, very, very solid cash game play, and we'll see a little bit more DeMar Carroll possibly starting on Monday, and I think that might – scare some people away a bit, but Paul George is Paul George, and I don't think he's really guardable at this stage, given what we saw in game one. I remember possession at the end of the game. I think it was like 2 minutes, 30 seconds on the clock, and DeMar Carroll was guarding PG, and PG just completely lost him on a Miles Turner screen and pulled up and knocked down a jumper. I don't think DeMar is kind of anywhere near 100% and anywhere near that kind of lockdown defender we're expecting out of him. And I'm definitely running it back with PG, and definitely put his regular season struggles against the Raptors behind him, and Pete said it best. When the playoffs come, these star players step it up, and they just take their games to a new level. And PG definitely did that early on.
Yeah, and given the blowout potential of other top options, which we'll talk about soon at his position, I don't expect a performance. Like, he was lights out shooting from the field last game. But as with DeMar Carroll's injury, like, they don't have really anyone who can stop him right now. They're going to put Carroll on him, but with that injury, like I said, I just don't think they can stop him at this moment. I think he's another top option tonight.
Yeah, they're only implied to score 93.3, but we kind of see how this team works, especially in the playoffs. Going to Paul George, he's going to have a big usage rate increase, especially to keep up with this game. So, yeah, we saw last game, the Raptors just had no answer. If they stick DeMar DeRozan on Paul George at any time in the game, PG is just going to burn him. So I like him quite a bit too. And, John, like you mentioned, some of the other options, we do have some blowout factors for sure to be aware of, kind of top price guys. So I think Paul George is a strong play. Anybody else on this team? I think Monte at a weak shooting guard position is kind of sneaky. I probably lean more towards tournament only. I don't think it's as necessary to go him in cash, kind of with this low implied team total again. And then Miles Turner off the bench came through with 5 blocks. I think he's a slightly intriguing tournament play, just kind of as a contrarian play, getting exposure to this team where I don't think a lot of people will kind of look at.
Yeah, I think Monte is a pretty nice tournament play, especially if Toronto comes in this one kind of overloading on PG, trying to go out of the way to stop him. Monte might get freed up for to do a little bit more offensively than he usually does, and did put up 33 DK points against them in game one. So he's we see he still can be a really good per minute producer. I'm not really chasing Miles Turner with the blocks, and I think he did get a few more minutes than he usually would have with Jan Mahimni in constant foul trouble. Even got Jordan Hill in the rotation too, so I'm not really chasing Miles Turner here, even though he did come in with 26 DK points last game.
Yeah, Jan Mahimi's price point at DraftKings would be the only one that seems intriguing to me. But at the same time, given that rotation in their last game, you can't really trust anyone else right now.
Yep. All right. Yeah, I agree. Let's move to the other side. The Raptors implied team total of 100, which is pretty nice. Coming off a horrible game one, this team has not been great. Some of these players in the playoffs in their career, so it's kind of like a pretty big game for them, a bounce back spot. I like getting tournament exposure from a lot of these guys. Lowry again, even though he didn't come through last game really at all. I think DeRozan, we saw him kind of get locked up by Paul George. The usage was certainly there, but he was missing a lot of shots and looked really bad overall. The guy who looked best, was in foul trouble the whole game, was Jonas Valanciunas. So his price point, I like getting quite a bit of tournament exposure to him again, kind of like how we talked about in game one. So it's a pretty similar thing. Norman Powell, I think you can write off. There's a possibility he might be out of the rotation. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with the Raptors here. As of, I think it was noon Eastern, Dwayne Casey said they'll stick with the same starters for now, but I think there's a very good chance that he'll change things up by tip-off. And there's been a lot of talk that they're going to move from a 10-man rotation to a 9-man rotation, and that would imply that DeMar Carroll would probably get the start, likely over Norman Powell. And that also leads to strong suspicion that Norman Powell might be out of rotation now entirely, which I can definitely see happening. It basically either comes down to Norman Powell or Scola. So if Casey ends up starting DeMar at the 4, then that leads me to believe Scola will be out of rotation. If DeMar starts at the 3, then Powell will be out of rotation probably. So yeah, I mean, the Raptors as a whole, you touched on this earlier with Casey, this rotation just a complete mess. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He isn't staggering DeRozan's minutes when PG's off the court. He's playing Terrence Ross. He's playing Scola. He's not playing Patrick Patterson nearly enough. I think Pat barely got in their third quarter. He came in with a minute left or something. There's 2 minutes left in the third quarter. Pat should be starting, I think, over Scola pretty clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just kind of, Casey's incompetence rears its head again, and I think this will be a close game, and I think this is definitely a team you want to target just because of the other blowouts that we have, 13-point spreads, 13.5-point spreads in the other 2 games. So I'm actually okay, cashing Valanciunas. I think he's a very strong cash option. I think he offers similar per minute upside as Bogut, but doesn't have he has foul trouble issues, but not nearly to the extent of, I think, Bogut with guarding Dwight Howard. So Valanciunas is right up there with top cash option at center alongside Dwight Howard. And I'm more willing to cash Lowry than DeRozan just because of the DeRozan's matchup with PG. I just don't – I mean, his shot selection was awful game one. And I think one of his 4 shots he made was this ridiculous spin fade that he just threw up a prayer and happened to hit. So I think this is a good bounce back spot for Lowry. Still managed to put up 27.5 DK points despite playing really poorly, and saw 41 minutes, which was incredible.
I think the minutes are the big thing, especially with his price point at DraftKings. The shooting 32% over his last 10 games is worrisome, and he's produced only 32 DraftKings points over that time. But as you said, he played one of the worst games of his life and still put up 27. So just for the minutes and price point alone, it's certainly worth going back to him.
Yeah, DK only 7,400. So, yeah, I think it's a good spot. And I think we can't really stress enough. This is a low total, 2 good defensive teams, but the other 2 games – we saw in game one how big of blowouts there. So there's definitely a concern there. They're 2 very strong home teams. So I'm with you guys. I like getting exposure to the Raptors here. 2 guys I'm looking at. I I don't think I mind Patrick Patterson in cash at this point. I think
I don't either.
Yeah, I think Casey's going to have to give Corey Joseph and Patrick Patterson more minutes. It's their best unit. These guys need to see the court more. Patterson needs to see 30 minutes. Joseph is good when he's in. So, I look at Joseph as a sneaky tournament play, and saving money on the slate, I'm okay with Patrick Patterson as power forward number 2. We don't have Millsap anymore on the slate. So he's a guy I'm probably looking to pair up with Draymond at the power forward position, and then it allows you to spend up elsewhere. So I think in this spot, coming off that game 1 loss, I'm hoping that Casey realizes he can't play Skull that much. He needs to play Patterson a bit more, especially in that second half. So those are kind of things I'm looking at and gaining exposure to these players.
Yeah, both those guys are great on DraftKings. Corey Joseph, 3,100, and Patrick Patterson, 3,200. So very cheap, very affordable, and a really solid base of minutes to where they'll pay off their value pretty easily.
And 27 minutes for Joseph last game. He might even have to play even more because he was definitely their best player last game.
Yeah, second best player behind Val.
True, yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of value in these guys. They're implied at 100 points team total. So, and shortening the rotation is always good for us. It's obviously good for the Raptors. I don't know why he didn't start with the 9-man rotation. So he definitely needs to limit Skull's minutes here for them to bounce back in the series. Let's move on to the next game. The Mavs at Thunder. The Thunder are favored by 13. It's a total of 200. We saw last game how it was just it was really, really ugly for the Mavs. I don't really see them bouncing back too strong. David Lee is out with of course, the plantar fasciitis, which defeats everybody except Gordon Hayward. JJ Barea has been ruled out with a strained right groin. And then Darren Williams listed as doubtful, but participated in parts of shoot-around and said he's going to try to play. He said he'll know more, 7 Eastern, I believe. So that's definitely something to monitor. It sounds like he'll be a game time. I think either way, I'm with Barea already ruled out and Darren, I think pretty clearly limited. He was very, very bad last game. So I think either way, it's not going to move the line much. I think it opens up additional value to Devin Harris and Raymond Felton if he is ruled out for sure. But either way, I think Darren will be quite limited. So let's start in with the Mavs side and get through. So they're implied at 93.3 points, which is certainly low. Not a team we really want to target. We saw last game. I mean, these starters were just – Wes was a bust. Dirk was a bust. Darren only put up 6 DraftKings points, 6.75. So it's not a spot I'm looking to go anyone on this team. I think there's a lot of other value out there. I think with the point guard news, I think we need to strongly consider as punt plays. Raymond Felton and Devin Harris are kind of the only 2 guys I'm looking at here. Maybe some Wes.
I do think that Darren is more likely to try to play than sit out. So as of now, I'm kind of expecting kind of a limited Darren Williams to be out there. We'll see. But there's been word from Tim McMahon. I think Eddie Safeco just came out with a report 3 minutes ago that said Darren will try to play too. He just doesn't want to be a liability to his teammates if he's too limited. So as of now, assuming Darren plays limited minutes, I don't want anybody on this team because there's no reason to go back to this given how they looked, given the spread, given the total. So, like you mentioned, only if Darren Williams is out, I'll look at Felton, as I don't know. I don't know how strong I look at Felton. He's a point guard 2 for cash. Would you put him up there?
Yeah, I would, just because you got to save somewhere. You can't go Patrick Patterson. I think Felton's a value play there. I mean, there aren't that many guys that are realistic. Like we talk about all these good plays and stuff, but you can't play them all. You need these value guys to pop up, and I think Felton, I think he's up there pretty high on the point guard list. You go Russ and Felton perhaps. If Darren's out, I'm fine with doing that.
Yeah, and go DK shooting guard too at a particularly weak position as well, and he's good there.
Yep.
What do you think? What do you think we'll see from this team here, John? Being the Mavs fan.
That's why I'm wearing black, because we're attending a funeral today. No, I like Felton, as you said. Justin Anderson is by far their most athletic guard, but given Carlisle's history with the rookies, despite his recent production, I just don't know how much they're going to play him. Now, I think they'll be in a position where they have to play him, but by then it could be way too late and it wouldn't even matter for any of our purposes. So if choosing between West and Felton and Harris, I definitely like Felton, especially since he tends to fill up the entire box score.
All right, so let's do this front court here. Dirk Nowitzki, I think is a decent tournament option in case this one gets close. He has to have a huge game for them to even stay remotely in this. And obviously coming off a dud where he only played 25 minutes, put up 22 DK points, no one's going to be on him. So I think just, given, his spot, the potential that he does have a big game. Holger, his shooting coach, is in town. I worked out with him on Sunday, so maybe a little narrative there. And I think he's enough to have a tournament exposure. On this 3-game slate with not a lot of options.
Yeah, definitely. I think Dirk's a great tournament play. Yeah, it's for some of these tournaments, we have decent sized tournaments. So some of these large field GPPs, you have to be contrarian. People are going to kind of figure out who the chalk is pretty quickly. You'll see these high ownerships, and Dirk's a guy, I think, looking at the Mavs last game, their implied team total, and just kind of how this one could get out of hand. I think Dirk's a nice tournament play because, like you said, if this game is close, it's going to be because of Dirk. He's going to have to score a lot. So, yeah, I like him as a tournament play, especially a pivot at the power forward position. I'm not really on Zaza too much. I think a decent amount of people went him last game, then he ended up not even starting. So it's just a big question mark for me with the front court with Salah, Madri, and Zaza.
Yeah, and their starters were a net rating of minus 84.2. So I don't know what they're going to do with the front court. It's just an absolute disaster right now. I'd much rather just pivot towards, as we go into Oklahoma City talk, someone like Enes Kanter.
Yeah, let's jump into the Thunder side. I don't think there's too much there with the Mavs. It's pretty dependent on Darren news. I think the value opens up at the guard position. But on the Thunder, implied at a healthy 106.5. We saw kind of the downside, I guess, with Durant, especially that first slate, paying up for him when you kind of had other options at small forward where you didn't really need to pay up for him as much. And he busted, I guess, compared to his price, of course, but the blowout is still looming, so I think it's something to look at. Russ came through big time. I think given Steph being questionable, although I'm sure he'll play, I think you're still going to want to run it back with Russ here. And I'm not sure about going Durant. I think with maybe Felton and Patrick Patterson, that allows you to possibly afford Durant on this slate. We don't have a guy like Jay Crowder to kind of anchor that position at a much cheaper price anymore. So I'm fine going Durant in cash, given that this value opens up specifically with Felton. And then, I think Kanter, we kind of might have overlooked last pod with the blowout potential, but I think he's in a very similar spot here at a pretty cheap price to run it back with him as well.
We go on Durant or PG here because I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think you're going to pay for both. I probably would end up leaning PG just because of the security with the minutes and the kind of expected game flow. Obviously, I love Kevin Durant, but given the likely blowout potential, especially if Darren is out / limited, no Barea, this one can get ugly again quickly, and which removes the necessity for Kevin Durant to play, mid-30s in minutes. And, for me, it comes down to that. I don't think I'll end up paying for both Durant and PG. So Durant's more kind of given the composition of the slate, probably more of a tournament play for me.
Yeah, I prefer PG. However, I would say that since everyone's thinking one direction, stacking Russ and Durant in tournaments would be the contrarian approach tonight, which seems crazy, but and it could easily backfire given what we assume the score will be. But as I said, in tournaments, I think that's a leg up on competition.
Yeah, I like stacking those two together, maybe pair them with Dirk as well, because the only way Russ and KD are going to come through huge enough is if this game is somewhat close. So I think you kind of want to pair that with someone on the Mav side to kind of allow this game to be close. And then Ibaka had a big game last game. He's done well against them, so I'm fine looking at him. Probably a bit more of a tournament play, just kind of given his price point. And I don't know. Are you guys willing to? I know, Justin, you have a pretty hard rule of never cashing Ibaka, but are you looking at him at all in this spot?
No, not. I mean, I'm fine with him in tournaments, so I'm not gonna cash him. I think I'd probably look to Patrick Patterson just as a punt in that for that position and not have to pay the extra. What is it? 2,000 plus to get from to get to Ibaka. I'd rather punt with Patterson and save and spend elsewhere. So that's probably what I'll look to do in cash. But yeah, tournaments, I'm good with it.
Same. It's the exact same. It's just right now, it's not really worth Ibaka at that price, especially given all the other value surrounding him.
Okay, well, the last player I want to talk about real quick is Enes Kanter and what to do with him as far as cash goes. He's 4,500 on FanDuel, same price as Bogut actually dropped 100. So I think we're looking now. We saw Bogut's foul trouble concerns, and we saw Kanter crush last game. We have the blowout for both teams. It works more in favor of Kanter than Bogut. Are we flip-flopping on who we're kind of recommending here in cash between the two?
No, I'm still willing to run it back with Bogut. I do get it. I think it's close. Bogut has a tendency to commit some really dumb fouls. He still did really. I still like the play quite a bit.
Yeah, I do too.
All that matters is one of the top, if not the top, center cash option last game. And he did, theoretically come through. He put up, 18 DK points in 16 minutes. So he was over a DK point a minute. So if he played, 23 to 25 like we expected, he would have, put up 25 plus pretty easily. So I think it's close. But Dwight Valanciunas is there too, and I don't feel the need, given the options there, to have to look to Kanter, in cash.
Yeah, I don't think it's a situation where he'll be in foul trouble each and every night. I just don't think the matchup calls for that. Now at FanDuel, where Kanter is only $200 more, $4,600 compared to $4,400, I would lean Kanter just because their price points are way too close for me to go Bogut. However, at DraftKings, I'm definitely going Bogut over Kanter.
Okay, yeah, I think it's really close. I like Kanter in the blowout spot more than Bogut in a blowout spot because it kind of works in favor of Kanter hitting the glass hard at the end of the game. And I do kind of anticipate, I know you do too, anticipate this one being a blowout. So I like the security of Kanter with a double-digit spread at home.
What I will say, though, I think this Warriors-Rockets game will be
a little closer.
Yeah. I think the Rockets will end up covering, and it'll be close enough to where Bogut isn't sitting at like big chunks of the fourth quarter for Swag Zealer. We won't see a lot of Mo Spates garbage time in this one.
Oh, man, which that's too bad because there's nothing better than some Mo Buckets garbage time. Yeah, and I as long as Bogut doesn't get fouls from like 30 feet away from the hoop, that'd be cool. Standing way out there by the center court almost.
He just decides just randomly, just gets in the mood. It hits him sometimes where you're just like, I just want to check someone just for no reason.
Yeah, it happens, man. I mean, it's going against the Rockets especially, so yeah, it's all good. I think it's really close. I think tonight it's going to be really difficult for me to choose on FanDuel who I'm going at center. It will be between probably Kanter and Bogut. I like the price point. I think as of now, I'm leaning Kanter because I really like that game to be a blowout. Darren hobbled, Berea out. I just don't see the Mavs keeping this one too close, and I trust Kanter's per minute basis, quite a bit. But it is really close. Let's jump into the Rockets-Warriors game. Warriors are favored by 13. Obviously, last game was a horrific showing by the Rockets. They just look so out of sync. The chemistry is not there at all. This is a 218 total. Rockets are implied at 102.5. Are we anticipating the same starters? Is he really going to run Corey Brewer back again?
I think so because, Modi Yunus had like a usage rate of like 80%, like when he was on there at the end.
Yeah.
I didn't think he played particularly well. He ended up with a decent line, but had like a couple turnovers in there as well. He was just being overtly aggressive. I do expect them to run it back. This is a tough spot for Bickerstaff, man, because he's got a rotation full of players who can't play. So it's like you can throw out guys out there, but they're not going to miraculously end up working out. He's got guys like Michael Beasley, Josh Smith. Brewer, Modi Yunus. None of these guys have been reliable, dependable, consistent at all this season. And one thing I think would be interesting to see if you play a little bit more KJ McDaniels. I think it's a little.
Yeah, I think that's fine. What I really want to see is the two bigs. I want to see Clint Capella and Dwight out there crashing the offensive boards. I think that's their best chance to stay competitive. I think them two on the court together this season have been solid. So that's something that I would hope that he would explore a little bit more in this series. But, yeah, like you said, Bickerstaff's in a tough spot. Having to start Corey Brewer in a playoff game, I just think is horrible. So I don't know. I don't know if he's for sure starting Brewer again. I hope not. I don't think that's their best starting unit by any measure. So we'll see what they do. But let's talk about who we're looking at playing in terms of DFS on our lineups tonight on this team. We saw Harden really struggle. Dwight came through, I think, on DK again. He's another great value, 6,300. I think it's a very strong cash play. You can certainly go there. And after that, it's pretty bad. We saw the downside of Beverly, who also got in foul trouble. So how are you kind of going about looking at the Rockets in terms of cash and tournaments?
Yeah, it's just Dwight for me again. I don't think I want to, go back to these players. I talked about this in the previous pod. I'm only gonna even look at any of these guys in games 3 and 4 when I think it'll be a little bit more competitive. In this kind of atmosphere at Oracle where blow up potential is looming. I think it's very profitable. I do think though that if Steph ends up sitting or for any reason like that, and it kind of shifts the dynamic a little bit. The game becomes a little closer. Then I'd be willing to consider some more Rockets here. By Rockets, I probably mean a lot of Harden in tournaments. Maybe dip back into Beverly. Maybe this time they'll show up for the game and not for the fight. And but other than that, there's these players. There's so much volatility in this rotation that you don't even know who's going to play 20 plus minutes outside of Beverly Harden, Ariza, and Dwight. It's just too much volatility.
That's why I don't think it matters who starts between Beverly, between Brewer, between all of them. Like much to his credit, Bickerstaff got out of the way and just started throwing different combinations in to try something. I mean, he got Beasley in as early as he could. He started playing Josh Smith alongside Modi Yunus. Like, he was determined to find something that worked. Just much to just dismay, he does not have the right rotation to find something that works against this team. So no matter who starts, it's just going to be a disaster. And I personally think we'll see more KJ McDaniels. I don't think he has a choice, but for our benefits, I don't think that matters too much.
Yeah, I'm on the Capella train. I think he's got to go Capella and Dwight in there. Focus on the offensive rebounding against the Warriors unit. I can see McDaniels as well, but I lean more the side in terms of keeping it competitive if they want to do the two bigs there. Yeah, and I'm with you. I think exposure should be limited unless Curry does end up sitting out, which I am not expecting him to, but you got to be aware of the possibility at least. So I think for now, Dwight on DK. I think Harden's a fine tournament play, of course. I think you can afford him too on this slate, kind of if some value opens up with Felton and Patterson. You go a cheap center in Cantor or Bogut. I don't think it's as difficult to afford Harden, so I don't mind exposure to him as well. Let's move on to the Warriors side. Implied to score 115 points. Obviously, the big news here: Steph Curry questionable with his ankle injury concern again. So I'm expecting him to play. Are you at all worried? His ownership was slightly lower than I thought, actually, last slate. We saw Russ which wasn't too surprising that Russ had a high ownership. But I didn't think the disparity would be that high between the two. I think now with the ankle concern, I'm expecting similar ownership again, if not even more, in favor of Russ. This being the late game, I think a lot of people are just going to go Russ over Curry. And then we saw Clay, get bailed out, I think, that second half with Curry sitting because Clay was not on pace for a solid game, and his price point isn't fantastic here. So who are you looking at? I think Draymond is a pretty clear-cut, strong cash play. We already kind of talked about Bogut. What are you kind of doing with these other Warriors?
Yeah, I'm still willing to run it back with Iguodala at 3,500 on DK, 3,700 on FanDuel. I know he only put up 13 DK points and was really disappointing in that first game, but with Steph banged up a little, I think he'll have to step up and take a little bit more of the playmaking responsibilities with that first unit, with that second unit, whatever he's playing with. I'm still willing to run it back with him. And Draymond, really obvious chalk cash game play. Klay Thompson, I think you can talk me into some cash game exposure with Curry banged up. I've vehemently been against Klay consistently. I've always been on the side that I don't think he's consistent and reliable enough. I don't think he has enough statistical versatility in his game. Like when that shot isn't falling, he doesn't do anything else. But in this spot where he can benefit from Steph being a little banged up, maybe he'll need to step up a little bit more than he has in the past. We saw him, stat pad quite a bit during the second half, especially in that fourth quarter there. I think he can really benefit from Curry being banged up. I like him, and I'm still willing to have some shares of Harrison Barnes. Talked about him in the first pod. A big game's coming. He has the potential to go 30 plus DK points, once in a while. So I'm good with him in tournaments at 4,500 on DK. And Steph, I think the ceiling is a little questionable here, given I don't think he'll play a lot of minutes. I think Kerr and the training staff will definitely keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't go too far. But given the vast disparity, I think, like you mentioned, his ownership compared to Russ, I think, I definitely want quite a bit of exposure to Steph in tournaments. We saw what he can do in limited time. He put up 42 DK points in just 20 minutes in game one. And, given this Rockets team is, defense is very prone to lapses and mental mistakes, I think Steph can once again have a big quarter here, even if he doesn't play his usual 35, 36 minutes.
Yeah. I think his minutes definitely are concerning because I'm assuming also that he'll be slightly limited tonight. But as you said, the production in the minutes is really what matters. At the same time, though, Klay Thompson, although I love the spot, where do we stand between him and I guess in shooting guard is so bad. Like, would you consider Raymond Felton, or is Klay just the easy cash tonight?
Yeah, I think on DK you can definitely look at Felton and Klay Thompson as your options. I'm not really looking at Wes Matthews. I'm not really looking at James Harden. Not really looking at DeMar DeRozan. So that kind of leaves those two as the guys remaining. And then on FanDuel, it's kind of the same story. I mean,
luckily we get Devin Harris at shooting guard at FanDuel, so we don't have to worry about that.
I mean, that's if Darren doesn't play.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't think I'll go Devin Harris if Darren starts.
No.
I think I'll still look at Felton pretty strongly, especially on this slate. A weak shooting guard. A lot of people last slate played Kyle Korver because it was the weakest overall position. The depth wasn't really there. You had to pay up at other positions, so it was kind of tanking almost shooting guard. And I think we're in a similar spot here where that opens up a lot of Felton exposure. So I expect to see a lot of top players use Felton as a cheap play. And then, I think that opens up more Klay possibility because it's just such a limited position overall. So I think on FanDuel where you have to start two, I think Klay is kind of a stronger play here. I don't think he's going to start off 2 for 7 or whatever against the Rockets shooting. So, and with Curry a bit limited, we anticipate. I think Klay will look to get his shot going a bit early. So I'm looking at Klay. I mean, I went him in game one, and I think you pair him with Felton, you kind of spend up elsewhere. you still have that salary relief to get some of these other guys, like especially Draymond, I think will be very chalky. And yeah, I'm with you with the Curry tournament call, I think is huge. Putting up that many points in that few minutes. The beef with Bev, we've seen what Curry can do. His upside is incredible, even in limited minutes. So I think he's a great tournament pivot, especially based off projected ownership between him and Russ.
Yeah, and in the off chance that Steph does sit, obviously Sean Livingston becomes super easy chalk, 3,400 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel. So I don't think you need to really overthink that in the spot. And
Iguodala would be too, yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely stack those two together as your kind of punt plays, and I think you definitely frees up some salary for you otherwise. Other than that, I think that pretty much does it. Beverly's little act, we talked about it. We were on Skype talking about this during the chat. I was the one. You guys are saying, I think it was smart or whatever, but I'm of the opposite opinion because I think this Warriors team tends to space out and tends to lose focus. And when something like that happens, it kind of snaps them back into things and, makes them focus in and pay attention a little bit more and kind of get locked in. You kind of see Draymond coming right back after, send that hard screen on Bev, get him back. Yep. And then, I think you pull these tactics on someone like Blake Griffin, but not on the Warriors and Steph.
Yeah, the only reason I said it was smart is because they don't have a fighting chance in the series anyway, so they have to do something. I think Bickerstaff has to mix it up. He's got to do something, and I think he should play Capella and Dwight. McDaniels is fine, but either way, I'm not expecting this game to be too close. Unfortunately, it's only a 3-game slate. We have another game that's a blowout and then another game that's very low scoring, so this is just what we have to work with. You just have to predict the minutes in every scenario and which scenario is more likely. I think blowout is more likely than not in this game. So you kind of have to anticipate that, factor that in when making your laps. I think either way, we have some clear-cut value guys on this slate, some Warriors that we want to go. Like we talked about Bogut earlier. His price point is still there. He produced pretty big. He was, like you said, a great per-minute basis rate. I'm not expecting to get 5 fouls in 16 minutes again. Hopefully not. And I think this game will be slightly closer than last game, so his minutes aren't too much of a concern. Let's talk a little bit more about Iguodala. A bust last game, but he allowed for better roster construction. Is that kind of why we're looking at him again, just because he's so cheap at a position where it kind of makes sense to go? Obviously, we do have Paul George and KD. Paul George was overlooked in the first game. I don't think he'll be overlooked in this game. I'm not sure if it's a good strategy to kind of pay up at small forward and save elsewhere. You could go 2 cheap shooting guards, Felt and Devin Harris, and then maybe go Paul George and KD. Is that kind of an option you guys are exploring?
Iguodala is just so – his price point sure is enticing.
I'm
fine rolling him back personally.
I'm fine rolling him back too. I think you're reading way too much in that first game. During what do you have? 4 regular season games that we have written down here. He averaged
31.1 DK points.
31.1 DK points against this Rockets team. He's very prone to turnovers. Hemorrhages points on the wings, especially. So, you're looking at Iggy. He definitely disappointed. Only 13 DK points in his first game, but you kind of look at his history against his team and this defense overall. Steph being banged up, I think this is still a really.
I do too. Yeah, I'm fine going Iggy and cash again, and then it allows you to kind of spend. You can get Clay at a thin shooting guard position. You can get Russ. Possibly KD or Paul George as your small forward 2. You can get Draymond. You kind of go a cheap center, and then tournaments, you just mix it up with some contrarian plays, possibly some Dirk, some Curry, so things like that. But overall, I think it's a similar slate to the first night. We don't have the Hawks Celtics, but we still have a lot of the same plays to look at.
I think this is a good tournament slate. I'll leave some closing thoughts that say kind of go the opposite way of what happened in game one. I think people had a tendency to look at game one totals and what players did that first game and read too much into it and expect that exact same thing to happen. So I think it's really profitable to kind of zig where everybody else is zagging and kind of fade what happened in the first game, kind of expecting some regression, especially with guys, we mentioned Bogut, Iguodala. So I would say, look at that. And also I would, we touched on this earlier, Russ, KD, jerk fade, where you're looking at these lines where people are expecting blowouts. People are expecting blowouts in that, Mavs Thunder game and stacking that game instead, kind of going where everybody else is, avoiding. I'd say, it's kind of a profitable tournament play for this slate.
Yeah, that being said, also, only 3 games, I'm not concerned with a low total like the Pacers are at. Since we just assume and almost know that one's going to be the closest, no matter the pace for each team, I'm fine with a lot of exposure in both directions, whether it's Lowry, DeRozan, as we talked about, Paul George, especially Jonas. I don't care about the low score. And my second thought is that I hope on television they're playing the Stars game because I'm going to turn the Mavs game off within 10 minutes probably because I'm going to be so disgusted.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, John. You got no hope in that one.
I'm crying.
All right. Well, you somehow worked the hockey statement into this NBA pod. That's pretty brutal. But let's close this off. I think this is like a 12-game slate pod in length, but we wanted to break these games in depth for you guys and highlight some plays in both formats. So good luck on this slate. I think we're going to have a pod for you guys again tomorrow. We're going to try to do a pod for every single slate the rest of the way going forward. So good luck, everybody, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Go on, guys.